Welcome to Audacity Works, a podcast inspired by and dedicated to the working artist, the creative entrepreneur, and generally, doing the damn thing. This exists on the premise that the world belongs to those who have the audacity to believe that their lives have value. This is for you. Welcome to Audacity Works. I am your host, Rachel Strickland, and this is episode number 98, in which I want to talk about leaning way in to the things that you love about your work. But first, some updates. This episode is airing on the 23rd anniversary of the attacks on 9/11. And I came really close to accidentally saying happy 9/11. That's not the appropriate thing to say. So I won't be saying that, but I do think that, at least for Americans, this is our generation's "Where were you when Kennedy got shot?" I myself was a sophomore at the University of North Carolina at Asheville, and I was upstairs in the apartment that I shared with my roommate, and I was having a shower, and my roommate yelled up to me, "Come downstairs, we're going to war." And like most of you, I then sat in my living room and watched this unfold. Later that day, I had art class. My teacher was devastated. I almost thought he was just going to tell us to go home, and I wanted him to tell us to go home. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to go home. But instead, he said, "You know what? Let's not go home. We're going to stay here. We're going to work on your pieces." And what our pieces were, the assignment was a rendition of the Tower of Babel. Mine was in charcoal. And I was very grateful to him for not letting us go home, because I was able to take everything that I was feeling and put it into this horrifying piece of artwork, which was a tower covered in screaming mouths. And by the time I left, I was out of breath and my fingers were covered in charcoal. But instead of just going home and carrying all of it with me, I had used my work to help process some of what I was feeling about what had happened. I have no idea what happened to that piece of work. I wish I knew where it was. I would show it to you. But my professor in real time was able to demonstrate to me and to all of us the role of the artist, and why when momentous things happen, horrible or wonderful, that's when the artists go to work. Also, around this time, 23 years ago, Manflesh was waiting to go into boot camp, and he got a call from his recruiter, and his recruiter said, "Am I still going to see you on Monday?" And Manflesh's answer to that was, "Of course you're going to see me on Monday." And that's how he began his over 9-year career in the military. So to the artists and to the veterans and to the service members who did go to work, thank you for your service. Oh, okay. I'm a little emotional there. I think I'm just going to reeling it in, because we got stuff to talk about. In other news, we are mid-week of enrollment week for cycle 27 of the Audacity Project. If you are listening to this in a timely fashion, you have until Friday at midnight, New York time, so 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to come down the rabbit hole with me, and by whose rabbit hole? Yours. Oh, that sounds weird. But anyway, that is what we do in the Audacity Project. We follow the white rabbit and find what it is that you want to be saying with your creative practice, how you want to be saying it, who you want to be working with. And we use that foundation to build promotional materials for you and to build you a map to get to where you want to go, so that it's that much easier for you to pursue opportunities. This is a program for people who are ready to take action and who are tired of theory. There's no theory in the Audacity Project. It's just action, and quite a lot actually, of loving support from me. The details are that the cycle runs from September 16th having to check my calendar there. Yep, which is Monday. We start our work right away next week, and it runs through to November 15th. There is a break week in there by popular demand, and that break week is October 14th through the 18th. So there's no class that week. There's no meetings that week. I just give you that week to catch up on your work or take a bunch of naps, whichever one you need. What it includes are weekly classes. Classes are Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you can't make the class live, a replay is always sent to the entire cycle. The work is delivered via Teachable, so you get an email every weekend saying your lectures are ready and a whole heap of targeted strategic assignments that are in a very intentional order. So I designed it that way on purpose so that you would have the weekend to look through the tasks, even get started on the tasks, read through them, think about them, and then have a couple of days until we have class on Tuesday where you can get some additional insights, ask questions, etc. It also comes with a private Facebook group. I know Facebook isn't in vogue right now, but I don't care. This group is the reason that I'm still on Facebook. It's an amazing, brave space and international community. It also comes with 2 private 30-minute one-on-one calls with me and unlimited support from me via WhatsApp. And to those of you who have already signed up, please use that. Every cycle, at the end of the cycle, I hear from people that they wish they had utilized the unlimited support more. Well, I agree. I wish you had too, because then I would know you a lot better. I could have helped you a lot more effectively. Otherwise, this would just be a DIY course. I wouldn't be involved at all. So that's really what you're paying for. Yes, the material is of a very good quality, but so is my time, and that's what I'm selling. I am in the business of catharsis and transformation, and I can't do that without you. Also, as an alumni perk, you are entitled to audit any future cycles for free. It doesn't come with the feedback, but it comes with class time and all of the materials and any additions that I have made to the project. So check the show notes. If you're into that kind of thing, it's available to you, but only until Friday, September 6th at midnight, New York time. So we're 7.5 minutes into a 20-minute episode. Let's get to it, shall we? What I wanted to talk about today is leaning way into what you love most about your work. And I got the idea for this episode when I went on a walk the other day. It was raining a little bit, and there's a development that wraps 2 sides of our property. And so I go out through the back gate, around this pond, and then I walk through this neighborhood. And this is a very posh neighborhood, right? It wasn't there when we moved in. When we moved in, it was just forest. But now it's like all of these really lovely low country looking houses and super tidy lawns that have turf lawns and manicured little gardens that cling to the porches. And it's all very, very tidy and clean, and it's a pretty neighborhood. So I finished my walk, and there is a gate that one of my neighbors, Troy, and Sean, my husband, Manflesh, they built this gate in between our 2 properties because me and Sean's property is wrapped in a fence. It's fenced, the whole thing. And the fence is made of wire, and we just wanted a way to walk between our house and our neighbor's house. So they built a gate. It's a lovely little garden gate. So I was cutting through my neighbor's yard to get back onto our property and just walking towards that gate and seeing our property from this tidy neighborhood. It looks like you are walking into another world. It's just this wild abandon of tangled trees and dripping Spanish moss and grapevines. It is the opposite of tidy. It's wild, old growth live oak trees and blueberry bushes and vines and sandy soil, and it is not everyone's cup of tea, particularly if you like a really clean, tidy yard. This is not that. Our house is not that. It's a wild place. But walking towards that gate to go onto our own home, I was just so riveted with delight because I love that shit. I was like, oh my God, I am walking into this twisted garden of Eden, Tim Burton style, and I love it. I love living here. And I just got to experience this moment of bliss, going from the tidiness into the wild abandon. And I was so blissed out by it that I just kept walking, and I walked through the woods, and I saw some enormous spiders, and I watched one of them sucking the rain off of its legs, one long leg at a time. And it was magical. And what struck me about it was, like, not everyone would want to walk onto that property. They'd be like, this is creepy. I'm overwhelmed and a little scared, and I want to go back to my sunny, tidy lawn. And no shame. I get it. But that's what I like. I like the creepy wildness. And it just got me thinking about how hard it is when you're making creative work to really be true to what you find exciting and compelling and magnetic and appealing. And that's what I want for all of you. That's what I want for myself. I want us to look at our body of work and look at the things that we've created and be excited by them, even years later, and be like, damn, that was hot. I love that. I'm so glad that I made that. And if you're pandering to some imaginary outside entity or trying to gain their approval, you're probably not going to feel that. You might feel like, oh yeah, I did. That's good work. I wish I had taken more risks. I don't know. And I don't just mean the finished work itself, because pursuing creative work while only thinking about the end product, you miss out on the mess of creation and everything that you had to go through to create that work in the first place. So allow me to take this moment to remind you that if you're a working artist, documentation is everything. And I do not just mean the finished product. Document your process. One, it can be useful if you need materials to apply to a residency or for funding or something. Personally, I use this documentation on the Patreon. I love sharing that process and all of the things that happen that no one else is ever going to hear about, because I'm not going to share it anywhere else. That's the inner sanctum. You know, it's how the sausage is made. And there's quite a bit of failure while the sausage is getting made. But if you're only focusing on the end product, you're going to miss out on all these other processes and all the lovely, glorious failures that happened on the way, even though sometimes they feel like shit. But they're still an important part of what it is to have a creative practice and to be making creative work, whatever that is. Like, take that drawing I was talking about earlier in this episode, the Tower of Babel charcoal piece that I was working on. If you just looked at the finished piece of that, one, you would know what it is. I'm not very good at subtlety. Most of my work is pretty grokable, if I can use that word. I guess I can, because it's my podcast and I just did it. But knowing the story about 9/11 and how I worked on it that day gives it so much more context. The process of making it is more interesting than the finished piece itself. And like, I got my liberal arts education, okay? I did. I have a bachelor's degree in creative writing. But even in university, we didn't have conversations about being process-based. It was always about the end product. And they did drive us in school to make as many things as possible, like write all of the poems, write all of the short stories, make all of the drawings. And that was really, really useful. Oh, that's the air conditioning kicking on. Sorry about that. But I wish that this idea had been implanted into my brain so much earlier than it was, because I took where I was at the end of college and then later on began working as a performing artist. And it was all about the finished product for such a long time. And it wasn't even until the past 5 years that I heard the term process-based. And I'm rambling on about this because not only do I want you to fall so much in love with the work that you're making so that you look at it and you're like, yeah, I fucking love that. I want you to fall in love with the process of making it as well, and take possession of that process. Make it belong to you. So I have a challenge for you, and this is actually a challenge that I put up in the caption on Instagram today, but like nobody reads captions. Nobody reads captions. And what that caption said, the challenge was to share something, like just anything about your work. Share a finished product, share a photo, share a process. So I want to repeat that here, just to give yourself the challenge of, in the 5 minutes after you listen to this episode, just share something. It can be in stories, it can be a post, don't care what it is, just share it and see what happens. And I also want to ask you, like, whatever it is that you're working on right now, or whatever it is that you're procrastinating on working on, ask yourself, what about this piece do you love? What about it is compelling to you? And feels, that magnetic pull to where, like, yeah, I want to make this. This is awesome. And how can you give yourself more of that? How can you flavor it so that you are so obsessed with the taste of your own work that you just want to keep making it, keep eating it? So really, 2 challenges for you today. 1, in the 5 minutes after this episode finishes, go share something. Share something about your work. Tag me in it. I would love to see it. And 2, consider the work that you're making right now and ask yourself, what do I actually really like about this? What do I find fascinating about this? Interesting about this? And how can you give yourself more of that? How can you lean more into it as you continue creating it? And how can you document that? Is it drawings? Is it voice notes? Is it video? Is it journaling? And get obsessed with your own work. Talk about it. Talk about it all the time. Because the more in love with your work and your own process you are, the more you will talk about it. You won't be able to shut up about it, because it's that exciting and it's that tasty, and that's what I want for you. And the more you talk about your own work, the more you understand it, and the more you learn about it, and that's what I want for you. So there's my benediction. Go forth and get obsessed with your own shit. Like, even when I look at the Audacity project and I just look at the materials and I look at the logo, I'm like, God damn, I love this. This is beautiful. And I got a lot of advice along the way to make it tidier. And I don't want that, because I like the wild abandon. So what do you like? And how can you lean into that even more? Looking at the time, I'm going to wrap this up. There's links in the show notes if you want to learn more about the Audacity project that's onboarding this week. By the way, does anyone actually read the show notes? I'm genuinely curious. Because if you do, then I'll continue to write them. But every time I write them, I'm like, I don't know if this is doing any good. So yeah, if you have an answer to that, please let me know. Would love to hear about it. And if you have any ideas or requests for future episode subjects, you can reach me always on Instagram at Rachel Strickland Creative, or on Patreon at Rachel Strickland Creative. If this was useful to you, the most glorious gift that you could give me would be to share it with someone else. This podcast is powered by Patreon, so extra fuzzy thank yous today to my patrons for being with me and for standing with me as I make all of the things, and sometimes I don't. It's seasonal. Thank you for making this and so much more possible for me. Thank you. Now, go get obsessed with your own shit, and don't go back to sleep.